My name is Mara Ellison. I'm 31 years old, and this is the story of how my almost marriage collapsed 2 weeks before the wedding, when my boyfriend told me he was in love with his ex. I didn't beg, I didn't scream, I just said, "Message received," and started tearing our life down to the studs. Hey, Reddit, if you'd met us a year ago, you'd probably have pointed at us as one of those, "See, some relationships still work" couples. On paper, we looked custom designed for each other. In real life, for a long time, we were. I'm an architect for a mid-sized firm that specializes in sustainable commercial buildings. Not flashy, but solid. Decent salary, good benefits, a career my parents can brag about without having to understand what I actually do. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. My car is paid off. I have a healthy 401k. I scraped together enough for a down payment on a house without lighting myself on fire with debt. I met Evan 3 years ago at a friend's housewarming party. He worked in event planning, which explained the way he could walk into a room and see flow, bottlenecks, and color palettes before he saw people. While everyone else was just drinking cheap wine, he was quietly moving chairs, straightening centerpieces, and making sure the food table looked balanced. He was funny without trying too hard, easy to talk to, and, rare miracle in modern dating, he didn't play games. He called when he said he would. He showed up on time. He remembered small things I said, like the exact brand of coffee I liked, or the fact that I hate cilantro with a passion. On our first date at this little Italian place downtown, he spent 20 minutes explaining why certain pasta shapes held certain sauces better. Most women, I guess, would have found it pretentious. I found it charming. Shows you how misleading first impressions can be. The first year was good, really good. We did the standard progression. Exclusive after 2 months, first vacation together at 6 months, moved in together after a year. His lease was ending, and my apartment had an extra bedroom I used mostly for storage and abandoned hobbies. Financially, it made perfect sense. That should have been my first red flag. How often we use the phrase "makes sense" instead of "feels right." We built our life like a spreadsheet. Rent split 50-50, utilities split 50-50, groceries and streaming services divided down to the cent. He appreciated that I wasn't expecting him to pay for everything just because he was a man. I appreciated that he didn't expect me to cook and clean just because I was a woman. It felt like a partnership, equals, or so I thought. Year 2, he proposed. Well, technically, he suggested we should start thinking seriously about marriage, and then panicked at how clinical that sounded, so he corrected it with an actual proposal. He asked my parents for their blessing first. My mother cried, my father gave him a firm handshake and a rare nod of approval. Evan planned an elaborate proposal at a botanical garden I loved. He hired a photographer, coordinated the timing so we'd be by the koi pond at sunset, and actually got down on one knee. I said yes. I cried. I posted too many photos. I'm not proud, but I'm honest. That night, his mother Patricia called him, then insisted on being put on speaker so she could tell us how relieved she was that Evan was finally settling down. Settling. The word pricked at me, but I smoothed it over like you smooth a bubble under wallpaper. I'd already said yes. The ring was already on my finger. The narrative was already in motion. The engagement period was when the cracks started to show, but I was too busy or too committed to look closely. Evan began spending more time with his old college crowd. A lot of them were either divorced or perpetually single and loudly proud of it. They hosted these wine nights where, from the snippets I heard, the main theme was how relationships are traps, and people are inherently disappointing. He'd come home afterward with this slightly dazed expression, like a person leaving a seminar they weren't sure they agreed with, but couldn't stop thinking about. He'd ask things like, "Do you think people can be truly happy in marriage?" Or, "What if we're just doing this because it's what people our age are supposed to do?" I chalked it up to pre-wedding jitters. I'd reassure him. We'd talk. We'd move on. But every time, something in his eyes seemed a little further away. 6 months before the wedding, we bought the house. That, to me, was the real commitment. A 30-year mortgage is more permanent than half the marriages I'd seen. Evan was obsessed with listings and neighborhoods and future school districts, even though we hadn't decided if we wanted kids yet. We found a 3-bedroom craftsman in a decent neighborhood 15 minutes from my office. The kitchen was trapped in 1987. The bathrooms were crying for updates, and the back deck looked like a lawsuit waiting to happen. But the bones were good, and the price was barely within reach if we pooled everything. We each put in 20% of the purchase price, down to the dollar. Both our names on the deed, both our names on the mortgage, legally and financially entangled in a way that would be a nightmare to untangle. That was the point, I thought. Commitment, stability, the stuff grown-ups are supposed to build. Weekends turned into Home Depot runs and arguments about cabinet hardware. Evan had strong opinions about everything: paint colors, fixtures, the exact shade of warm white that was acceptable on the walls. If I suggested something he didn't like, he'd get this tight look on his face and say, "If that's what you really want," in a tone that made it clear it was not what he really wanted. But there were good moments too. Painting the bedroom together, ending up with more paint on each other than on the walls, grilling for the first time on the suspect deck, lying on the living room floor after we'd finally dragged all the furniture in, exhausted and satisfied. Those moments felt real, like we were building something solid. Fast forward to 2 weeks before the wedding. The place cards arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. The afternoon sun streamed through the bay window of the house we'd bought together 6 months earlier, catching the honey gold shine of the original oak floors. I'd just finished assembling a bookshelf that came with instructions translated into 3 languages, none of them helpful. The house smelled like fresh pine, coffee, and a faint trace of the paint I'd used in the guest room that morning. Evan sat at the dining table, completely engulfed by wedding planning chaos. 3 color-coded binders, venue, catering, decor, were open in front of him. Fabric swatches in various shades of cream and gold pinned to a board. Place cards in neat stacks, each one a tiny blank future. He was hand-lettering every name in this elegant looping script his mother had taught him. 5 minutes per card, minimum. He insisted printed labels would be tacky. "Look at this, Mara," he said, holding one up. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. It looks so official." I walked over, wiped sawdust on my jeans, and kissed the top of his head. His hair still smelled like his coconut and vanilla shampoo. "It is official," I said. 2 weeks. We're almost there." He smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. I'd been seeing that look more often lately, a distant, searching kind of sadness, but I kept labeling it stress and filing it away. That night, I was in bed reading on my tablet when Evan came in. He didn't move through his usual bedtime routine. No joking about how many pillows I hoard, no brushing his teeth to some obnoxious pop song. Instead, he sat on the edge of the mattress with his back to me. The springs creaked under his weight. "Mara," his voice was small and tight, "we need to talk." My heart did that little roller coaster stutter. I set the tablet down. "Okay, what's going on? Is it the venue again? Do I need to go yell at someone about the linens?" "It's not the venue." He took a shuddering breath. "It's everything." I sat up, leaning against the headboard, the sheet suddenly too warm against my skin. "What do you mean, everything? Talk to me." He turned. In the dim wash of light from my tablet, I saw his face streaked with tears. My first instinct was to reach for him, comfort him. That's what you do when the person you love is hurting. But there was a wall between us, invisible, solid. I could feel it. "I can't do this," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mara. I can't marry you." The world didn't shatter dramatically. It just stopped. The hum of the fridge faded. The clock on the nightstand went mute. All I could hear was the thud of my own heartbeat. "What are you talking about?" I asked, and my voice sounded eerily calm to my own ears. "Is this cold feet? Because that's normal, Evan. Everyone says that's normal." He shook his head, tears falling faster. "It's not cold feet. It's my heart. It's not in it." "Not in it?" I repeated. The words felt stupid and foreign on my tongue. "We bought a house together. We have joint insurance. We're getting married in 14 days. Your heart has seemed pretty in it for the last 3 years." "I know," he cried, voice breaking. "I thought I was over her. I really did. But every time I look at those place cards, every time I taste cake samples, every time I pick a song for the first dance, I don't see you and me." He swallowed hard. "I see her." The air disappeared from my lungs. Her. There was only one her who could carry that weight. "Tessa," I said, his ex-girlfriend, the one with the wild eyes and tattooed wrists, the one whose specter had haunted the edges of our relationship from day one. He nodded, a fresh wave of sobs tearing through him. "She reached out a few months ago," he said. "Just to talk," she said. "And we started talking and it all just came back. The passion, the intensity. With her, I feel alive. With us. It's comfortable. It's safe. It's not the same." Each word was a precise surgical cut, So let me get this straight, I said, voice still flat. For the past 4 months, while we've been planning a wedding and buying a house, you've been emotionally involved with your ex-girlfriend. It wasn't like that, he insisted. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you. I'm just so confused. I can't marry you while I'm in love with someone else. It wouldn't be fair to you. Unfair. I looked around our bedroom. The framed photo from our Costa Rica trip, the closet with his shirts pressed up against my dresses, the stack of wedding binders just visible through the open door. It all looked like a stage set, a carefully decorated lie. The version of me from 5 minutes earlier would have begged. She would have listed our best memories, promised to be more passionate, less logical, more whatever he thought he needed. But that Mara was gone, demolished by 6 sentences. I swung my legs out of bed and stood up. I felt impossibly calm, like someone who'd finally received a terrible diagnosis and could stop guessing. Okay, I said. He blinked at me. Okay, what does that mean? It means I understand. I walked to the doorway. You're in love with Tessa. You can't marry me. Message received. Mara, wait. He scrambled off the bed. Aren't you going to say anything else? Aren't you angry? Don't you want to yell at me? I paused, my hand resting lightly on the doorframe. I looked back at him, tear-streaked, expecting a meltdown big enough to match his tragic dilemma. What would you like me to say, Evan? I asked quietly. You've been very clear. You think what we built is comfortable. You think she makes you feel alive. I'm not going to beg you to value a life you already decided to throw away. I stepped into the hallway. The floor was cool under my bare feet. Behind me, he made a strangled sound, but I didn't turn around. The first phase was over. The demolition had begun. In the spare room, I opened my laptop and pulled up our shared wedding folder. The cursor blinked, waiting. So was I. Okay, I whispered to myself. Let's tear this down right. I stared at the blinking cursor for a long time. I'm an architect. When a structure fails, you don't just walk away from the rubble. You study where it cracked. You plan a clean demo so it doesn't fall on your head. Fine. If my relationship was going to collapse, it wasn't going to bury me. I opened a new spreadsheet. List 1, wedding vendors, to cancel. The shared folder Evan had lovingly curated over 8 months was a masterpiece of organization. Tabs, color codes, payment schedules. He'd cataloged every contract, every deposit. I felt a small, bitter satisfaction as I used his system to dismantle his fairy tale. Venue, historic gardens, the place where he'd dreamed out loud about soft golden light and candid photos on the bridge. Deposit, $8,000. Remaining balance, $12,000, due 2 weeks before the wedding. We were 2 weeks out. I'd lose that $8K. I could feel my stomach twist, but then I pictured standing under a floral arch while he secretly wished Tessa was the one walking toward him. $8,000 suddenly seemed cheap. Caterer, gourmet affairs. Deposit, $3,200. The menu Evan had dragged me through 3 separate tastings to perfect. Past appetizers during cocktail hour and a 3-course plated dinner, because in his words, our guests deserve a real meal, not sad chicken and a cash bar. They'd get no meal. They'd live. Photographer, Jonathan. Somebody $2,800 for 8 hours. 2 photographers. Evan had his Pinterest board full of Jonathan's work. Candid shots, black and white portraits, artsy angles of people laughing in slow motion. All that future nostalgia was about to be useless. Florist $1,400 for centerpieces, bouquets, ceremony arrangements. Evan had drawn literal diagrams of each table, peonies and garden roses in blush and cream, down to the height of the vases. DJ $800 for a guy we'd never met, chosen mostly because he took our do not play list seriously. No Cupid shuffle, no cha-cha slide, absolutely no Macarena. Evan's hatred of line dances was biblical. Cake, $650 for a 3-tier vanilla cake with raspberry filling and buttercream frosting. We'd done the tasting on a random Tuesday afternoon, feeding each other samples while the baker watched and tried not to look bored. I'd thought it was romantic. Now it felt like watching a movie of 2 strangers. I added the numbers in another column. Total vendor deposits at risk, $16,550. The cost of an education in trusting the wrong person. I swallowed hard, saved the sheet, and opened a new one. List 2, financial entanglements to sever. Joint checking account. We opened it when he moved in. We each auto-deposited a set amount every month for rent, utilities, groceries, current balance, $4,200. Half was mine, half was his. Tomorrow morning, I'd move my $200 out, then close the account entirely. Shared credit card. The house card we used for furniture, decor, groceries. Balance, $300. We'd planned to wipe it out with wedding gift money. That won't be happening. I pulled up the statement. It was roughly 50-50. My charges, his charges. I decided I'd pay half and then remove myself as an authorized user. He could romance his debt with whoever he wanted after that. Utilities, electric, gas, water, internet, all set up in both our names. I'd need to decide, keep them and shift them into just mine for now, or shut them down when I left. Streaming services, Netflix, under my email, Hulu, under his, HBO. My brother's password we absolutely did not have permission to use. It was a surprisingly long list for a life that was breaking apart in a single night. New sheet. List 3, the house. This one hurt. We'd bought the place 6 months ago for $425,000. We'd put down $85,000 combined, $42,500 each. The mortgage was $340,000, split evenly. In 6 months, we'd paid maybe $8,000 in principal. So our equity was basically down payment plus a few thousand minus selling costs. Realtor fees would be 5 to 6% if we sold quickly. Closing costs, title insurance, the usual vultures. If I was lucky, I'd walk away close to even. If not, I'd take a loss. Could I buy him out and keep the house? Probably. Did I want to? I looked around the spare room. I saw the hall, the bedroom down the corridor, the bed where he'd told me he loved someone else, the kitchen where we'd talked about our future, the living room where we'd argued about paint, the backyard where I'd pictured our hypothetical kids learning to grill. Every square foot felt contaminated. No, I wanted a clean break. Sell the house, split whatever equity, walk away. Let strangers repaint and strip our ghosts out of the walls. List 4, leaving. Because I wasn't just leaving the house, I was leaving the city. 8 months earlier, I'd been offered a position at a firm in Denver to lead their sustainable design division. It was the kind of role I'd dreamed about since grad school. Big projects, real impact, creative freedom. I'd turned it down because Evan's work was here, his mother was here, our wedding was here. Maybe down the line, they'd said. Keep in touch. We'd love to work with you in the future. Down the line had arrived. I opened my email draft folder and found the old thread with the Denver firm. My cursor hovered over the compose button for a full 30 seconds before I made myself click. Not yet, I thought. After the vendors. After the house. After I've moved all the explosives into safe containers. By dawn, the sky outside the spare room window had turned soft gray. My laptop screen was a patchwork of spreadsheets and notes. 3 pages of lists. 7 tabs. A timeline that started with today and ended with moved and settled in new city in 6 to 8 weeks. I felt not okay exactly, but clear. There was a soft knock on the doorframe. I looked up. Evan stood there in the same t-shirt from the night before, dark circles under his eyes, hair a mess. He looked like he'd been crying on and off. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked, his voice small. "No," I said, "but I've been productive." I turned the laptop so he could see the screen. Rows of vendors and numbers stared back at him. He blinked. "What is this?" "What's going to happen?" I said. My voice startled me. It was flat. Almost professional. "I'm canceling the wedding. All of it. Today." The color drained from his face. "Mara, don't you think we should talk about this more? Maybe take some time. We don't have to make any big—" "You took 4 months of time to figure out you still love Tessa," I said, not raising my voice. "I'm good." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "The deposits are non-refundable," I continued. "I'll take that loss. Consider it my wedding gift to you and your passion." He looked like he might throw up. "The house is more complicated." I clicked to a new sheet. "We're both on the deed and the mortgage. I can't live here, and I won't leave my name tied to yours forever, so I'm going to buy you out." "Today?" he blurted. "That's not how this works. We'd need an appraisal and a realtor and lawyers." "I called a real estate attorney at midnight," I said. "He's meeting us at 9 a.m. at his office. I'm prepared to offer you $10,000 over half the equity to expedite the process. You walk away with a check and no mortgage. It's generous, considering the circumstances." He stared at me, blinking rapidly. "Where am I supposed to go?" For a moment, something twisted in my chest. I saw the boy who cried in my bed, not the man who'd been secretly dragging me toward an altar he didn't want. Then I pictured him texting Tessa about how confused he was while I calculated closing costs. The twist hardened into stone. "That's not my problem to solve anymore," I said quietly. "You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." His jaw worked, but no words came out. I closed the laptop and stood up. "Be ready at 8:30, I said. "Wear something you'd be okay signing your life away in." I left him in the doorway and went to shower. Under the hot water, I pressed my forehead to the tile and finally let one sob escape. Just one. Then I shut it off like a faucet, the way I'd shut off everything else. By 8:30, my hair was twisted into a simple bun. I wore a black dress and a blazer, the same outfit I used for important client meetings, my armor. Evan sat at the dining table, staring at the neat rows of place cards he'd spent hours perfecting. His eyes were swollen. He looked up as I picked up my keys. "I never wanted to hurt you," he whispered. "You did anyway," I said. "Intent doesn't change impact." We drove to the attorney's office in silence. The city rolled by outside the car windows, streets we'd driven together 100 times. Breakfast spot, favorite park, the florist we'd argued about bouquet styles in front of. They all felt like sets from a show that had been canceled mid-season. The attorney's building was glass and steel, new and sharp against the softer skyline. It reminded me of the kind of buildings I wished I were designing instead of cookie-cutter office parks. Inside, the air smelled like paper, toner, and expensive coffee. A receptionist led us to a conference room with a long wooden table and a neat stack of folders in the center. "Ms. Ellison, Mr. Carter," the attorney said, standing to shake our hands. "Let's get everything sorted." Evan looked at the pile of documents like they were explosives. To me, they looked like blueprints. Not for a future with him, but for my escape. The meeting was quick, efficient, almost disturbingly so. The attorney walked us through each document with calm precision. Title transfer, mortgage release, lien confirmations, equity calculations, and the buyout agreement. Everything had been prepped overnight based on the numbers I'd sent him. Evan sat there pale and silent, hands trembling as he signed each page. The pen scratched softly across the paper, and with every signature, another piece of our shared life was severed. "This line," the attorney said, tapping a section with a gold pen, "indicates that Ms. Ellison is buying out Mr. Carter's share of the property at an agreed-upon value. Funds will be transferred immediately following both signatures." Evan's voice cracked. "Immediately." "Yes," the attorney replied. "You'll both leave this office financially independent of each other." Evan looked at me with something between disbelief and grief. "Mara, we don't have to do this today." "We do," I said softly, "because I'm not dragging this out for weeks, or months, or years." His hand shook so badly he had to steady the paper with his forearm. When the last document was signed, I opened my checkbook, wrote a check for $62,000, tore it cleanly from the pad, and slid it across the table toward him. His eyes widened. "This is more than my half." "I told you," I said, "I'm being generous." The attorney nodded, gathering the documents. "This concludes everything. You are officially no longer co-owners of the property. Ms. Ellison, you have full ownership going forward." Evan pressed the check to his chest like it might vanish. "I don't know where to go," he whispered. "That's no longer my problem," I replied, not cruelly, just truthfully. We walked out into the parking lot. The sun was bright, uncomfortably so. Evan stood there, staring at the check in his hands. "Thank you, I guess," he said, "for whatever this is." "This is closure," I said, "and freedom." He squeezed his eyes shut. "I never wanted things to end like this." "People rarely do," I murmured. Then I got into my car, closed the door, and watched him shrink in my rearview mirror as I drove away. The next 48 hours were brutal. Not emotionally, logistically. Canceling a wedding is like running a marathon through quicksand. Every vendor had questions, condolences, and fees. The venue coordinator gasped. "Ms. Ellison, oh my goodness, is everything okay?" "No," I said, keeping my voice even. "But it will be." "What's the cancellation policy?" She whispered a soft, pitying, "You poor thing," then informed me I was forfeiting the entire $8,000 deposit. The caterer's tone was similar. So was the photographer's, the florists, the DJs, the cake bakers. Every call was another small emotional slice, another reminder of a future that had been carefully planned, but was now dead. By the time I hung up the last call, I'd officially lost $11,900 in deposits, the cost of removing a tumor from my life. I emailed the Denver firm that night. Subject: position availability. Message. Hi again. Circumstances have changed. If the role is still open, I'm interested. Earliest availability, 2 weeks. Mara. I didn't allow myself to think too hard about it. I hit send before fear could talk me into hesitation. Less than 12 hours later, the reply came. Mara, we'd love to have you. How soon can you be here? I stared at my phone until my vision blurred. I wrote back 2 weeks. The next week was a blur of packing, cleaning, paperwork, and pure adrenaline. I kept only what I truly wanted: my drafting equipment, my books, a few clothes, the tools I use for both work and mental sanity. Everything else, furniture, decor, joint purchases, got donated or sold. Evan came by once to grab what remained of his things. We spoke only briefly. He looked hollowed out, like someone who'd climbed inside a hurricane and didn't know how to climb back out. He took his boxes silently and left. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't say goodbye. Closing on the house happened fast thanks to my aggressive pricing. 3 offers in 4 days. I accepted one by the end of the week, and the closing date was set for 2 weeks later. The universe was helping me leave. I rented a moving truck, packed up my essentials, and left the keys with the real estate agent. When I finally drove out of the driveway for the last time, the house looked smaller, like a place I had already outgrown. My best friend Kevin took me out for coffee before I left. "You're really moving to Colorado? Just like that?" he said, eyebrows nearly hitting his hairline. "Yes," I said simply. "Wow," he murmured. "I mean, it just seems extreme." "Staying here seems more extreme," I said, stirring my coffee. Everywhere I go, I'd see him. Our grocery store, our park, our brunch spot. I'd run into his friends, his mother. The ghost of our engagement would haunt me. Kevin shook his head. "You're scary when you're like this." "No," I corrected gently. "I'm clear." He exhaled. "I hope you find what you're looking for." "I will," I said. And I meant it. The morning I left, I stood in my empty living room, now stripped of furniture, personality, and memories, and felt a strange lightness settle in my bones. Not joy, not grief, just space, possibility. For the first time in months, maybe years, my life was a blank drafting page again. I got into my car. The engine hummed to life. I pulled out of the driveway, the moving truck lumbering behind me, and merged onto the highway. The city I'd lived in for a decade shrank in my rearview mirror until it was just a cluster of shapes, then nothing at all. Ahead of me, open road, open sky, open future. I didn't look back. The highway stretched out in front of me like a clean sheet of drafting paper, miles of open possibility, waiting for new lines, new designs, new foundations. I drove 14 hours straight, stopping only for gas, bad coffee, and the occasional moment when the magnitude of what I'd done hit me like a cold wind across the chest. I wasn't running away. I was moving forward, even if the miles blurred together, even if my heart was bruised, even if I didn't yet know who I was without Evan. Crossing the Colorado state line felt like stepping into a new version of myself. Denver rose in the distance, mountains at its back, sunlight slanting across the skyline. It wasn't home yet, but it was open, unwritten, uncontaminated. My new condo was a 1-bedroom in Capitol Hill. Nothing dramatic, but it had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the mountains that made something inside me unclench. 900 square feet, just me. No shared furniture, no memories embedded in the walls. The first night, I sat on the floor with takeout Thai food, the smell of basil and chili filling the empty space. Outside, the mountains were ink silhouettes against the deep blue sky. I ate slowly, in silence, cross-legged on the hardwood floor, and I realized in a strange bittersweet flash, I was free. The first few weeks were a mixed bag of emotions. I'd wake up sometimes and instinctively reach for someone who wasn't there. I'd start mentally composing a text to Evan before remembering, then deleting every syllable. The ghost of a routine is still a routine, but slowly the muscle memory faded. Work helped. The Denver firm was everything I'd hoped. Passionate colleagues, complex projects, a genuine commitment to sustainable design instead of lip service. Within my first month, I was assigned to a massive mixed-use development combining residential, commercial, and green spaces in a way that aimed to reduce carbon output by 40%. This wasn't just design, it was purpose, a rebuilding of something real, inside and out. I joined a hiking group, because apparently everyone in Colorado hikes. Our first 14er, Mount Bierstadt, nearly killed me. The altitude punched the air from my lungs. My legs burned. My face turned a shade of red that should be illegal. But when I reached the summit and the entire world spread out beneath me, mountains rolling forever, clouds drifting like slow ships. I felt an electric clarity. You can't think about heartbreak at 14,000 feet. There's no space for it up there. The thin air strips everything unnecessary away. I went again the next weekend, and the next, and the next. Each mountain climbed carved away another piece of grief. A month after I moved, my phone buzzed with a message from Kevin. Evan got dumped. Thought you should know. I stared at the text. Not with joy, not with spite. Just mild, detached curiosity. Like hearing news about someone I'd once gone to high school with. I typed back. Thanks for the update. That was it. Kevin called immediately. That's all you're going to say? He demanded. The guy you were going to marry blew up your life for his ex, and she dumped him after a month. 1 month, and you've got no reaction. No ha? No, serves him right. Kevin, I said with a sigh, I moved on. His drama isn't my story anymore. But don't you feel vindicated? Something? No, I said. I don't feel anything, except maybe relief that I'm not involved in it. Kevin exhaled like I'd slapped him with enlightenment. Wow, you really are done. Completely. And the shocking part? I meant it. But the updates didn't stop. Kevin couldn't help himself. Apparently, Tessa had never planned anything serious. She liked the thrill of returning to an old flame. She liked being wanted. She liked being dramatic. Commitment? Not so much. When Evan tried to talk future, she ghosted him for a week and then dumped him over coffee. After that, Evan lost focus at work, started calling in sick, then not calling at all, then got fired. He ended up moving back in with his mother, Patricia, who had never liked me because I wasn't a doctor or a lawyer. Honestly, perfect. And then the messages started. From new numbers, from borrowed phones, from email addresses hastily created. Dozens of variations, all following the same cycle. 1. Denial. This can't be happening. We need to talk. Please respond. 2. Anger. You're a coward for running away. A real woman would fight for what she built. 3. Bargaining. If you give me another chance, I'll prove we belong together. I was confused. I'm sorry. 4. Collapse. My life is falling apart. I've lost everything. Please, Mara, please just pick up. I didn't respond, not once. Grief wasn't contagious. I didn't need to catch it. 2 months in, I got the call I'd been expecting. Patricia. Her name lit up my phone, and for a moment, I debated letting it ring out. Morbid curiosity won. Hello, Patricia, I said, voice cool and polite. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Mara, we need to talk about Evan. He is in a very bad way. Her tone was sharp, commanding, as if I were still dating her son and still part of the family's problems. That girl, what's her name, that one he left you for, she destroyed him. He's not eating. He's not sleeping. He's a shadow. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. I wasn't. Aren't you going to do something? She demanded. You loved him once. A real woman would show some compassion. People make mistakes, Mara. I closed my eyes. There it was, the hook, the trap. If I agreed, she'd drag me back in. If I yelled, she'd claim I still cared. If I cried, she'd think she was winning. So I chose truth. Patricia, I said calmly, Evan didn't make a mistake. He made a choice. A conscious, months-long choice to lie to me and betray me 2 weeks before our wedding. That's... The person you're describing, I continued, is dealing with the consequences of his own decisions. His well-being is no longer my responsibility. Mara, you heartless... I hope he gets the help he needs, I said, cutting her off gently, but it won't be from me. Goodbye. I hung up. Just like that. No shaking hands, no tears. Just peace. The next day I received one last text from yet another number. You're a cold, heartless person. You never loved me, or you would have fought for me. You just gave up. I'm glad I didn't marry you. I stared at it, then deleted it. It was the last piece of him that still had my attention. I didn't even bother blocking the number. He had nothing left to say that could reach me. Life in Denver didn't magically become perfect overnight, but it became mine, fully mine. I learned to ski. I climbed more mountains. I got promoted to senior design lead. I started cycling mountain passes with coworkers who became friends. And for the first time in years, I didn't wake up holding my breath. I breathed freely. And then, almost exactly 1 year after the house transfer, my firm sent me back to my old city for a major client presentation. I hadn't been back since I left. The moment my plane landed, I felt nothing. No fear, no nostalgia, just neutrality. The city looked smaller, like a silhouette I'd outgrown. The presentation was a success. Afterward, while packing my laptop, my phone buzzed. My real estate attorney. He had one last stray document from the house sale that needed my signature, something about a minor tax adjustment. I could sign electronically, but his office was 4 blocks away. I decided to walk over, tie up the final thread in person. When I signed the document and stepped back onto the street, I felt lighter, as if the last ghost had finally been exorcised. On impulse, I decided to visit the old coffee shop Evan and I used to go to on Sundays, not out of longing, but for closure, one final ghost to lay to rest. I ordered my usual black coffee. As I waited at the counter, I felt someone step behind me. A familiar scent hit me, coconut and vanilla, but underneath it, stale cigarettes and something sourer, harder. Mara, I turned, and there he was. Evan. He looked diminished, cheekbones sharper, clothes cheap but desperate to be trendy, eyes wild and too bright, a kind of frantic hunger in his expression. Mara, he breathed, I can't believe it's you. I believed it. Because some people don't stay ghosts. Some haunt you until you tell them, face to face, that they no longer can. Stop. And Sadsnoi. Continue ChatGPT, Danoi. Part 4. Continue. We stood there for a moment, me holding a paper cup of black coffee, him holding absolutely nothing together. He looked thinner, older, like the version of himself I'd known had been sanded down by bad decisions and worse consequences. I heard you were in town for work, Evan said, swallowing hard. I was hoping I'd run into you. I doubted that. Patricia definitely told him I was here, but I didn't bother pointing it out. Well, I said, voice neutral, here we are. He gripped the strap of his worn-out bag like it was a lifeline. Mara, can we talk? Just for 5 minutes, please. I checked my watch. My flight wasn't for 3 hours. I felt no fear, no anger, just a detached curiosity, like a therapist evaluating a stranger. 5 minutes, I said. His relief was so visible it was almost embarrassing. We took a small table in the corner. Sunlight washed through the tall windows, illuminating the dust on the tabletops and the shadows under his eyes. He wrapped both hands around his latte as if it could warm more than his palms. You look good, he said, voice trembling slightly as his eyes scanned me. Really good. I did. Not because I was trying to impress him, but because I'd spent a year doing things that fed my soul. I'd spent weekends hiking under real sun, not artificial comfort. I'd built a life where I breathed deeply instead of walking on emotional eggshells. I wore a tailored suit, my hair in a sleek twist, my posture unburdened. Thank you, I said. You wanted to talk? That was all the permission he needed. The dam broke. Mara, my life is a mess, he said, the emotion rushing out in jagged pieces. A complete mess. After you left, everything just fell apart. I sipped my coffee and waited. He needed this more than I did. I lost my job. I'm waiting tables now. Tessa? She wasn't what I thought. She maxed out my credit cards. Then left. Just disappeared. I'm living with my mom. I don't have money. I don't have friends. People look at me with pity. He sniffed, rubbing a shaking hand under his nose. I lost everything. My job, my home, my future. Then he looked at me with those frantic, pleading eyes. You were my real life, Mara. I was an idiot. A scared, stupid idiot. My face remained still. He reached across this table like he was going to take my hand. I moved mine slightly, not dramatically, just enough. He froze. We can start over, he whispered, voice cracking. We can fix this, right? We can get back what we had. I inhaled slowly, let the air fill my lungs, and then exhaled with deliberate calm. He waited for hope. Instead, I gave him truth. Evan, I said gently, what we had isn't something we can get back. His eyebrows pinched together. You didn't just break my heart 2 weeks before our wedding. You showed me who you really are. You revealed that the person I was planning a life with was a version of you I invented. He shook his head. No, that's not... I held up a hand. Not harsh, not dismissive, just definitive. I'm not angry, I said. I don't hate you. I don't even resent you anymore. I'm grateful. Grateful? He echoed, confused and wounded. Yes, because you forced me out of a life that was small, a life built on practicality, not passion. You freed me to build something that actually reflects who I am. He opened his mouth, eyes swimming with disbelief. Mara, please, I can change, I swear. You already did, I said simply. Just not in the way you think. Silence settled between us. His breathing hitched. So that's it? He asked. After everything, you're just going to sit there like some cold, unfeeling robot? I actually smiled, just a little. No, I feel plenty. I leaned back in my chair, letting the sunlight warm my shoulders. I feel the sun on my face when I'm at 14,000 feet. I feel joy when a project comes together after months of work. I feel excitement when I wake up and realize my life is exactly the one I want. I met his eyes. I just don't feel anything for you anymore, and that choice improved my life immeasurably. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the person across from him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he never had. I stood, adjusting my blazer, picking up my carry-on bag. Evan reached out again, like he might grab my wrist, but stopped himself. I placed a $10 bill on the table for my coffee. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. Truly. But it won't be with me. Mara, just wait a second. Goodbye, Evan. I turned and walked out of the cafe. Behind me, I heard his chair scrape, then stop. He didn't follow. I stepped out into bright daylight, the breeze cool against my face. The city hummed around me. Cars, chatter, footsteps, but it all felt muted. I felt light, unburdened, whole. For the first time since the engagement, I was absolutely sure. I didn't owe Evan anything. Not forgiveness, not attention, not emotion, especially not a place in my life. I didn't look back. I never would again. 6 months passed after that coffee shop encounter, and life in Denver unfolded the way a well-designed building rises, slowly, steadily, each new layer reinforcing the one beneath it. Work kept me busy in the best way. The mixed-use sustainable development I'd joined early on began moving from concept to detailed schematics, and I found myself leading an entire wing of the project. My team trusted me. My supervisors valued me. My ideas weren't just heard, they were implemented. I'd never realized how small my old firm had made me feel until I stepped into a place where my voice echoed in the right rooms. On weekends, I hiked. I cycled mountain passes. I learned to ski without looking like a baby giraffe on ice. I collected bruises and sunburns, and a growing sense of respect for this landscape that demanded your full attention. I made friends, real ones. People who didn't know anything about Evan. People who didn't define me by heartbreak or gossip or pity. People who met me as Mara, not the woman whose fiancé left her 2 weeks before the wedding. And slowly, effortlessly, the life I'd lost stopped feeling like a loss at all. It felt like a close call. Then, one quiet Thursday evening, as I was meal prepping for the week and chopping vegetables like an adult whose life was no longer in emotional flames, my phone buzzed. Kevin. I hesitated before answering. His updates were always unpredictable. Hey, I said, what's up? Kevin didn't even say hello. You're not going to believe this, he said. Try me. Evan's engaged. I didn't pause my chopping. Good for him, Kevin sputtered. That's it? Mara. He is engaged. Again. After everything. 3 months of dating, and he's already proposing to some woman who manages a call center. I set my knife down and took a breath. Kevin, okay, let me guess. She's stable, predictable, no motorcycle riding, tattooed, emotional, tornado energy? That's exactly how you'd describe her, Kevin said. So you've seen her? No, I said, amused. But I know patterns. Evan burned himself on passion, so he's swinging hard back towards safe and steady. He thinks stability is the cure for chaos. You're really not upset? Kevin asked, suspicious. I'm not anything, I said genuinely. His life is just not connected to mine anymore. Kevin was silent for a moment. I could almost hear him processing. You really did move on, huh? I smiled as I tossed chopped vegetables into a pan that hissed on contact. Completely, I said. Kevin, I haven't thought about Evan in months. I mean that sincerely. Well, Kevin said slowly, I guess that means I should stop sending updates. It does, I said gently, but thank you for the last ones. They helped me close the book. We said goodbye, and I went back to my cooking, humming softly to myself. The conversation didn't linger, not for a minute, not for a second. It was just something that happened and then evaporated, like breath on glass. That's when I knew the last thread had truly snapped. Work got busier. I got busier. My life kept expanding. I traveled for site visits, went on a few casual dates, nothing serious, nothing heavy, just the soft person kind of connection that reminds you you're alive and human but doesn't demand anything from you. I wasn't looking for another love story. I was still writing my own. Seasons turned. Denver's crisp autumn shifted into a quiet, reflective winter. Snow softened every street. Hiking boots were traded for skis. Weekends were spent on slopes or beside fireplaces with new friends and mugs of hot chocolate. When spring arrived, it felt like someone opened all the windows in my life at once. I found myself laughing, loudly and often. My apartment smelled like fresh air and pine-scented candles. My calendar was full. My projects were thriving. And the woman who had once been left in a dim bedroom with 6 sentences that broke her world, she was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer, and impossibly lighter. And then, one night, lying on my couch with a book I wasn't really reading, I felt a sudden surge of clarity, an urgent need to share the story. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, not even out of catharsis, but because someone, somewhere, was about to marry the wrong person for the wrong reasons, and I wanted them to know. You don't have to stay in the burning building. You're allowed to save yourself. So I opened Reddit, typed, "Hey Reddit, you won't believe how my almost marriage collapsed, and how it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me." And I began to write. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with truth, humor, and a kind of peace I never imagined I'd feel. I wrote because I wanted to show what it looked like to choose yourself after someone else chose chaos. And somehow people listened. The post blew up. Thousands of comments, messages, people saying they needed to hear it, people saying they finally saw their own situation clearly, people saying they felt less alone. It felt surreal, like the universe had handed me a microphone and said, "Okay, tell them what you learned." So I did. And somewhere in that whirlwind of online support and unexpected attention, I felt something settle in my chest. I belonged to myself again. And then, a notification. YouTube channel admin, do you want to tell this story to our audience? We think people need to hear it. I hesitated for only a moment. Then I smiled. Yes, I did. Because this wasn't just a breakup story. It was a rebuild story, an escape story, an architect standing in the rubble and deciding to draw new blueprints. It was mine, and sharing it felt like the final, perfect line on the page. The video went live on a Tuesday. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few thousand views, a handful of comments, the usual swirl of "you deserve better" and "he wasn't worth it." But I underestimated 2 things. How many people have been burned by comfortable partners who choose chaos? How badly people want to see someone walk out of a collapsing life and build a better one. The video exploded. Hundreds of thousands of views, then 1 million, then more. Comments poured in from people saying, "Thank you, this gave me courage." I thought I was crazy. This helped me see the truth. Your calm was power. I want that version of myself. I'm leaving my fiancé after reading this, today. People messaged me privately, telling me they ended toxic engagements, walked away from manipulative partners, packed their bags, and chose themselves for the first time. It was surreal, humbling, a little terrifying. My story, my heartbreak, had become someone else's lifeline. And in that moment, sitting in my Denver apartment with my laptop glowing in the dark, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't a victim of what happened. I was the narrator of it. The difference felt like stepping out of a cage I didn't even know I'd built. A month later, the YouTube channel reached out again. Your episode helped us gain thousands of new subscribers. Want to make another? Maybe answer questions people sent in? I agreed. Not to relive the drama, but because helping others detach from destructive relationships mattered to me now. It felt like a calling I hadn't expected, helping people see the architecture of their own emotional traps. I filmed Q&A style segments. How to recognize emotional manipulation. How to leave safely and decisively. How to rebuild a life from scratch. How to stop equating stability with love. How to avoid partners who confuse intensity with compatibility. I wasn't a therapist, just someone who'd been through the demolition and survived the debris. But sometimes that's enough. The community grew around the channel. Thousands of people regularly commented, sharing their own stories, supporting each other, rooting for strangers across the world. And somehow, through it all, I stayed centered, grounded, unaffected by any faint ghost of Evan. Because at that point, he wasn't even a memory. He was a closed chapter, a file tucked away in a drawer I no longer opened. One evening, about 1.5 years after the breakup, I was on a video call with the channel host, reviewing analytics for the next upload. We were laughing about a comment someone left, something about preferring my architect calm over any fictional heroine, when another notification popped up. Email, new message, unknown sender. Subject, I'm sorry. It was from Evan. I stared at it, felt nothing, opened it. It was long, too long. The kind of apology people write when they're spiraling more than repenting. He talked about regret, about wishing he could undo things, about seeing the video and realizing what he'd thrown away. He said he was embarrassed, ashamed, humbled. He said he hoped I was happy. I read the whole thing, all of it, without a single flicker of emotion. Then I clicked archive. Not delete, not block. Archive. a digital drawer where irrelevant things go to die quietly. I went back to the call, laughing again within a minute. Evan's name was already forgotten. A few weeks later, something happened that marked the true turning point in my emotional landscape. It was a Saturday morning, bright, warm, the kind of morning that makes the city feel like someone scrubbed it clean. I grabbed coffee from my favorite local cafe and headed to the farmer's market downtown. I wandered between booths, touching handmade pottery, smelling fresh bread and herbs, tasting peach samples from a vendor with a wide grin. I ran into a friend from my hiking group, Sam. We chatted for a while, about work, about trails, about weekend plans. His smile was easy and genuine, and before he left, he asked, "You want to join a group hike tomorrow, thinking about Gray's Peak?" I said yes without overthinking it. As he walked away, I felt something flicker gently in my chest. Not swooning, not longing, just interest. Soft, warm, possible. It wasn't about Sam, necessarily. It was about me. For the first time since everything happened, the idea of someone new didn't feel like stepping onto thin ice. It felt like fresh earth, stable, untrodden, ready for something to grow when I was ready to plant it. Not rushed, not forced, not needed. Just open. That night, I sat on my balcony with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the city lights glow like constellations below me. The air was cool, the mountains were dark blue shadows, a soft breeze brushed my hair, and I realized I had rebuilt my life brick by brick, designed it with intention, poured a foundation that didn't depend on anyone else's emotional weather. Evan hadn't ruined me. He had released me, in the most painful, clumsy, ridiculous way imaginable, but still. He set me free, and I had used that freedom to make a better life than anything I ever could have built with him. My story wasn't about betrayal anymore, it was about rebirth. I closed my eyes, breathed in the mountain air, and smiled, because I knew, deep in my bones, I was exactly where I was meant to be. 6 months after that quiet balcony moment, the one where I finally felt the clean, steady hum of peace, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both earned and effortless. Work was thriving. My Denver circle had grown. I'd summited 9 more 14ers. I could ski a blue run without praying to every deity in existence. And I'd started something small but meaningful with someone new. Not Sam, though we hiked together often. Not anyone dramatic or cinematic. Just a man named Caleb, someone I met through a mutual friend during a weekend barbecue in Golden. He worked in environmental consulting, had a gentle voice, kind eyes, and a calmness that didn't demand space but offered it. We weren't rushing anything. No labels, no timelines. Just shared coffees, shared trails, shared laughter. It was the kind of connection that felt like a door opening quietly instead of being kicked in. And I wasn't comparing him to Evan or to anyone. He simply fit into my life in a way that didn't feel like distortion. One clear Saturday afternoon, I was sitting on a bench in Cheeseman Park, sketching ideas for a new project in my notebook. Nothing official, just lines and shapes and the pleasure of imagining something new from nothing, when my phone buzzed. "Kevin," I answered immediately. He never called without reason. "You're not going to believe this," he said, launching right into it. "Are you sitting down?" "I am," I said, smiling. "What now? Has Evan joined a monastery?" Kevin snorted. "Okay, listen. You know how I promised I'd stop giving you updates?" "Yes, multiple times." "Well, this one is worth breaking the rule." I sighed, but my curiosity activated like a reflex. "Go on. You remember that woman Evan got engaged to? The one who manages the call center?" "Yes." "Well," Kevin paused for dramatic effect. "She dumped him." I blinked. "Already?" "Yep, 3 months in. Apparently he was," quoting her, "emotionally volatile and unable to commit without drama." I let out a soft laugh. Not cruel, not mocking, just profoundly unsurprised. "Kevin, I don't mean this harshly, but why is this worth telling me?" "Because," he said, "he's been calling around his old friend circle, and he told everyone he now realizes you were the love of his life." I stared out across the park. People walked dogs. Kids played soccer. The city hummed softly around me. Then I said with absolute clarity, "That's not my story anymore." Kevin was quiet for a beat. "That's what I figured you'd say," he said softly. "Just wanted you to know in case you heard it from someone else." "Thanks," I replied, "but I promise you it doesn't land anywhere inside me, not even a ripple." "I know," he said. "Honestly, you feel different now, happier, lighter. I don't think he ever got that version of you." "Neither do I." We chatted a bit more about work, life, and the new trail he wanted me to try next weekend. Then we hung up. And as I sat there on that park bench with sunlight warming my shoulders, I realized something important. Evan's chaos no longer even touched the edges of my peace. He was a ghost I had outgrown, a closed file, a lesson, not a wound. A week later, the YouTube channel reached out again. We're close to hitting 100,000 subscribers. Want to record a follow-up? People love your voice, your calm, your clarity. I sat with the message for a moment before replying. Sure, why not? Because if sharing my story once helped people walk away from someone who made them small, maybe sharing the next chapter would help them see that life after destruction could be beautiful. That healing wasn't just survival, it was redesign, reconstruction, reinvention. The channel filmed me outdoors this time, at the edge of a trail overlooking a valley, bathed in golden afternoon light. My hair blew slightly in the wind. I wore hiking boots and a soft fleece. No makeup beyond the sunscreen I slathered on religiously. I wasn't performing a character, I was just me. I looked into the camera and said, I didn't rebuild my life to be stronger for anyone else. I rebuilt it to be at peace with myself. And every choice I made, from canceling the wedding, to selling the house, to moving to Denver, was just me choosing myself in small, consistent ways. You can do that too. You don't need someone else's permission. You don't need closure from the person who hurt you. You can be the one who closes the door. It felt honest, whole, complete. And when the video ended, the cameraman nodded softly and said, You're going to help a lot of people. I hoped he was right. Later that night, after the crew packed up, Caleb drove out to meet me for dinner. We sat on the patio of a small restaurant in the foothills, the mountains silhouetted behind us. He didn't ask about Evan. He didn't ask about the video. He didn't need to. He asked about my design ideas, about the next 14er I wanted to try, about whether I preferred sunsets over sunrises. He asked about me without trying to resurrect who I used to be. And that gentle curiosity felt like something blooming across the inside of my ribs. Not fast, not desperate, just steady and real. I didn't know where it was leading. I didn't need to. All I knew was that I liked the way I felt sitting across from him, present, unburdened, and quietly hopeful. And that was enough. When he drove me home later, he walked me to my door. I thanked him for the ride and the conversation. He smiled, warm, easy. See you Saturday, he asked. For the hike, I said, definitely. He nodded, tucked his hands into his jacket pockets, and stepped back. Good night, Mara. Good night, Caleb. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and paused in the quiet. My apartment, my home, felt warm, safe, mine. I set my keys down, slipped off my shoes, and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Denver glowed beneath me, light, movement, life. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt the full, quiet truth settle in my chest. I wasn't rebuilding anymore. I was simply living, fully, freely, finally.